Hello and welcome to Drop the Mic podcast, where we discuss technology, theology, and all things in between. I want to personally thank you for joining us today. Now sit back, relax, share this, engage with the podcast that's already in progress. God bless you. 11 to 12 things to get through to have a clear understanding of how to work the connection process. It's just not as easy as, oh, let me just put a QR code up. No, there is a systematic process that's going to go through this. The question you need to ask yourself currently, do we have strategies in place for guest experiences? For first-time guest experiences? What is the strategy? So that we're not overwhelmed. Is it documented? If it's not documented, you don't have one. Plain and simple. What's up, y'all? I'm DK Hammond, servant, leading and connecting people to their destiny. And today I want to talk about connection strategies or assimilation processes that churches use to get information from a new guest, a new person, and then being able to put them in a process of some sort so that you can keep up with them. So my hope is that I'm able to kind of give you this information. So let's get into it. Again, my background is definitely in building the processes of assimilation, and how that works is you have to identify what it is that your church is wanting to do or trying to do. And one of those things that a church is always trying to do is gain information from people. It is that effort that you're able to connect with people at a later time, and in a connection of people, you are then able to build relationships, build rapport, and that rapport then turns into membership. That membership then in effort turns into leadership. That leadership then turns into deployment. So you'll hear me talk about that in some length to kind of give you a tidbit of what the process looks like. So let's walk through it. A person at your church is either going to encounter, the Word of God. The Word of God is going to bring them closer, or they're going to have an encounter at your church where the experience was so intense that God made them move upon a decision. And in that decision, now this person is sometimes emotional, sometimes kind of like not on their game, and they want to go into a place to kind of make this decision in a very sound way. Okay. And in that effort, you're going to have pastors going to do a verbal, what we call verbal. They're going to do a verbal across the pulpit to say, hey, you want to go ahead and join our church. Here is how. There's a QR code on the back of your chair. There's a QR code on the screen. There's a connect card in front of you. Fill that information out and we'll follow up. Or in a very traditional setting of African Americans, you're going to have that person get up. That person then walks to the altar. That altar worker then escorts them to a room to get information from them. And then that information is supposed to be deposited within your CHMS system. That system is on the back end. You're building an account, you're building follow-up and rapport. Now, I'm giving you all of that because that's kind of the background. I'm going to walk through this very slowly and intentionally so you'll understand how this works. Now, in an African-American church, it's going to be one of those things where I got to get up, all that kind of stuff. No, eliminate that. What you want to do is make low barrier efforts so people can be a part of your ministry and get more information. So the first way you want to do this that I've seen work is you want to be able to communicate in QR codes, right? QR codes work, but if it's too many QR codes at one time, you overwhelm the people that's trying to get connected to your church. So in other words, you want to have one QR code that has all the information connected, and these people can then connect themselves to whatever part of that process, and then what I call pathways onboard themselves into said process. So if you're just coming on, I'm DK Hammonds, and I'm giving a talk about how you can have a better connection strategy in your ministry. This comes from Pierre's conversation about what do people do, whether it be black, white, or whatever. And I've worked in various ministry contexts. And so let me give you a story on how this works. So when I first got to the church, they had no definitive process of how they were to walk a person from start to finish. At the end goal, the person is trying to be a member of the church, and or we want them to be disciples of Christ. Okay, that I would say is that. We want them to be disciples of Christ. So how do we get them to be disciples of Christ? What is the process? Here's the end goal. The end goal is for you to be a disciple and you be able to be deployed out to make more disciples. That is the end goal. So how do we do that in our ministry context? That's important, y'all. Identifying how you would do that. The end goal. Okay? So that's number one. Now, let's walk through the things that you would need. Things you would need. You're going to need a team. So your team is going to be a part of like the creative team. You're going to be a part of the first-time guest or greeters ministry. You're going to have identifiable core values that you want them to be able to convey to people, how to get baptized, how to become a member, etc. You want to have a welcoming environment. So in that welcoming environment can then just kind of soothe or ease them in whatever place they may be. So it doesn't need to be loud, rambunctious, a whole lot of people. You want it to be nice and cool, right? Potentially you want to have a first-time guest, right? A first-time guest gift. If you have that, maybe a book, maybe something that was written by the pastor, maybe a t-shirt, maybe a mug, whatever the case may be. You want to have something to give them in exchange. There has to be an exchange in order for this to work really well, right? And then you want to have processes to identify how a first-time guest takes what we would call next steps. What is the next steps for your first-time guest? You want to give them a place where they began. You want to teach them about salvation, salvific experience, baptisms, how to get involved in some cases, Sunday school or small groups, or how to get involved and how to serve, and then what is the workflow. So I'm going to try to go through those things. That's about 11 to 12 things to get through to have a clear understanding of how to work the connection process. It's just not as easy as, oh, let me just put a QR code up. No, there is a systematic process that's going to go through this. And if I had time, I would put an actual document that I put together and show the group how that actually works. But I'm just going to talk through it because I'm using this as recording content. All right. So let's talk about person at your church. Person makes a decision. How are they going to be able to make that decision adequately? So there's a couple of ways you're going to be able to do it. QR code means you have a cell phone. Well, let's say you have an older seasoned saint that doesn't have a cell phone that works that good. So you're going to have a connection card. And you're going to hand them a connection card, potentially a pen, and they fill that out. And they can put that in the offering bucket to be retrieved and be data entered in later. That's the process. It has to be data entry, right? All right. So, of course, you have your greeters, because in most contexts, people are playing double duty. Those greeters identify those potential members. And if you have a waiting area for them, escort them to that waiting area. If not, give them the card, place the card within the offering container or whatever designated place, or give it to that particular usher. And once you've done that, then the actual card is then follow up on the back end, right? So I don't want to get ahead of myself because there's a lot of things to process, right? Okay, so let's see. So now the back end has the information. Whoever the admin is or the data entry person is to implement or put that stuff in the system as under the first time guest, which introduces to our church what we would call CHMS systems. These are the customer relationship management systems that keep our people in a one place stop that we can always reach out to them or connect with them at any given moment. If you don't have them, please consider RAM, which is an ACS product. Please consider Breeze. You have Ministry Platform, or the easier one these days that a lot of people are using is Planning Center, right? That information goes there, and then we create what's called a workflow on the back end that identifies those users and how we're going to handle them to make sure that we're follow up with them, okay? So that's a part of that designated guest experience. So the question you need to ask yourself currently, do we have strategies in place for guest experiences? For first-time guest experiences? What is the strategy? So that we're not overwhelmed. Is it documented? If it's not documented, you don't have one. Plain and simple. Do you have a strategy? Is the strategy documented? Have you followed up with that strategy? Right? That is important. All right, cool. So what teams do you need? You need a creative team to kind of create the environment, a team that has materials like connection cards, or in some places, you can create the connection cards to exist digitally And they can be on iPad, so they can already be set every single Sunday, and you don't have to repeat that process 25 times over, right? It can be done. Okay, and here's how it can be done. It can be done because what you're going to create on your back-end system is a form that operates as a connect card. When that person comes to your designated room or that person experiences your QR code, they would fill out that form, and that form will go right into your system automatically, which removes the space of having a person doing data entry. They only do data entry to those who actually fill the card out versus those who do the QR code. So there's two on-ramps that you need. Think about it. One is going to be a person fill out the card. Two is going to be how we handle them electronically. That goes back to opportunity number one. Okay. And so you have your creative team that kind of handles the creation of that card and creating the environment. Then you're going to have your ministry team to make sure that we have ministry meaningful connections, as well as setting the tone for our guests and communicating church vision or communicating what the church wants to communicate to our first time guests. All of this takes place in probably less than 5 to 10 minutes, tops, right? Then potentially you'll have what we'll call relational team or a follow-up team to follow up to ensure that this person understands what their next steps is going to be and how to get to said next steps. Okay. And then from there, you're going to have the 5 roles of responsibility for each team and develop a communication plan or strategy in which you're going to communicate with your people. Now, is any of this process biblical? Let's look at Acts chapter 2, 42, 47. It said, all believers devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and the fellowship and the sharing of meals, including the Lord's Supper and to prayer. A deep sense of awe came over all of them. The apostles performed many miraculous signs and wonders, and all believers met together in one place and shared everything they had. Think about that. They shared everything they had. They sold their property and possessions, shared their money with those in need. They worshiped together at the temple each day, met in homes for the Lord's Supper, and shared their meals with great joy and generosity. And all while praising God and enjoying the goodwill of all people. And each day the Lord added to their fellowship those who were being saved. That's the context. Now, the core value of this is centered around this. You have worship, passion, connecting, serving, growing, giving generously, and creating a culture that understands the importance of adding to the church. Now, this is for those who have been around the church and those potentially. This is the Bible. The Bible is illustrating to us very clearly on how we're supposed to handle that. We don't do it that way. We create mimics, schemes in an effort to get people in. And that doesn't necessarily always stick. And we always have people that say, hey, I don't know my next step. Hey, nobody followed up with me. Okay. All right. So let's keep going. This is good stuff. All right. So from there, this person is joined. We've discussed our values. In most cases, what you want to have for a person that is just joined, you want to have something in place. So let's talk about welcoming environments as it relates to how we're handling church. I think it's super important that when we're having new guests, we need to create an environment so new guests can experience us first time and first time only. So what kind of environment have we created or space do we have to create a welcoming environment for our first time guests? I think that's super important. So for us, we used to have a small room. If you're a first time guest, beeline it to the left. Now, here's the thing. Those who are extroverted are going to go beeline to the left every time. Those who are introverted are going to settle for your QR code. So there's 2 onboarding pieces in which people then integrate themselves in your ministry, right? 2. Make sure we got that under control. All right, cool. So the welcoming environment is the other piece. Let's get back on track. I think this is pretty self-explanatory. Do you have a gift of some sort? So sometimes I've seen churches where they have a journal or they have a pastor's book that may have been written. Those books then help as your first time gift. Because every time they come to your experience, you want to be able to give them a gift. Now, what happens when a person does not come into the guest experience spot? Then they can just breeze through there and pick up a gift because they've already done a QR code. It is up to the people that's in the room, in the environment, to ensure they get their information and data. I don't care how many times it is. make sure you're getting all and capturing all data and information as much as you need to. Make sure you do that. That's super duper important. All right. And if not for nothing, if you can identify any local partners that may want to donate, anybody that may be a business owner that may want to donate, that'd be a good place. So how do you identify first-time guests? Again, you hear me say, number one, there's a welcome area. Number two, the host or the pulpit person, designatee, the verbal, that person, connection cards, and online. I haven't really talked about online, so let's get into that. I think it's important that the same experience that you have in person, you should try to mimic that online. And so you should have an online card that is digital, that a person can simply hit a link, get right into it, gain information on a digital space, as well as whatever you're giving away in a digital space, and be able to connect as well. So we're going to digitize that experience through those 4 particular lenses. So I think that's important. And then what you're ultimately creating is a starting point. Here's where you start. You start here. And then now we can go through and say, have you been baptized? Person may say, no. Cool. When is the next baptism class? Most of the time when these churches that I visited or I consult, we don't know when the next class is going to be. So you should have a class every single month. Every month, a baptism class is going to happen. Unless there's nobody in there. But every month, we have a scheduled baptism class. Every month, we should also have a scheduled membership class. And I believe, in my personal experience, professional experience, these classes are 2 different classes. So you're going to go through a class to join, potentially. No, you're not. You'll go through a class to be saved. You're going to go through a class to baptize, be baptized. You're going to go through a class to be a member. Now, can those classes be done digitally? Yes. Now, some people should say, I'm a hireling and, you probably shouldn't do that. I would say you do what fits your ministry context. If your ministry context asks for you to perform a digital acquisition or a digital thing, then you should do it. If your ministry context don't provide that, then don't. Okay? Point blank period. All right. So you're going to create that salvation, let's say salvation video. So it could be the same video every single time. You're going to do that. Same video. You're going to create a baptism video. Same video every time. You're going to create a membership video. Same video every time. And then you put the starting and touch points in between those videos. So now it becomes a point of conversation. Do you believe that you're baptized? Do you believe that you're saved? Do you understand why? Do you have questions about the video? If we need to put a quiz up or whatever, and you have this existing on your whatever platform you want to, and these people can readily get this information. So now a person can potentially be saved and baptized in a month. And then they go through the membership process. I've seen people do membership process for 16 weeks. Well, I've seen people do it for one time. Whichever one fits your ministry context, you find that out and you do that. Right? That's super important. I think the next thing is now you have membership. The purpose of membership is to identify people who have already gone through prayer of salvation. They've already been saved. They've already been baptized, and they desire to be a part of this family verbally. And so now you create that environment. And so what I would do as a point of emphasis, I would create a space where they can come, be a member, watch the video, and probably have some food. Again, the apostle teaches us that we should do that together. Have a moment of fellowship and reflection. And then now we can have a more deeper conversation in terms of relationship. And boom, now we have them as members. But that's not enough. Now we want them to be members, and we also want them to be able to be a part of the ministry and help. Not be slaves, not be indentured servants, be a part of the ministry and help. How can they do that? Now we introduce them in that membership class to the places in which they can serve. This also should probably be a part of your back-end system if you don't have. Or you should have it on a document that says, here are the identified places, here are the emails and names of people, or those same people should be at that meeting and they can meet them one-on-one. That way there's a good handoff and handshake between this membership class and them serving. And from that serving, they should have, and now I'm going to the weeds, and then that serving, they should have another training class that gets them ready to serve. And so they've been a part of some type of process for the last 3 to 4 weeks. And now they have identified themselves to serve, and they've been serving. And now they may say, hey, I feel like God is calling me to more. And now here's the thing about discipling. Now we move them over to say, now you're called to leadership. Let's put you through a leadership process. What does that look like for us? Right? And so that is the process in of itself. And I'm sorry for the technical difficulties and things of that nature, but that's the process in which I've seen work in multiple places. The only thing I think I missed potentially is small groups, but every church doesn't have a small group. So if you have a Sunday school group or another group that they can get to, that would be what I would do after membership. So they can get them ready to be assimilated, right? And then that's kind of like the workflow. And then I'll talk about that later because I can talk about each piece for a period of time. So again, thank y'all for looking past my faults today. And I hope this was super duper helpful because I feel like this is a place in which a lot of people fall short as it relates to their church ministry. And this is an opportunity to really move ahead in the things of God. So thank y'all so much. Peace. Thank you for listening to today's podcast. My hope is that the podcast added value to your life. Please, please, please subscribe from your favorite application, leave us a review, and even follow us on YouTube for your up-to-date information. Thank you. Peace.